I think what was incredible about teaching at Universidade do Estado de Rio de Janeiro, UERJ, or the State University of Rio de Janeiro, are really three primary things. First, it was the opportunity to plan the course with Professor Cida Salgueiro of UERJ and also Professor Felipe Fanuel. We had the opportunity to think about how we wanted to structure it. We started planning early, and we structured the course in a way that Black manhood here in Brazil, as well as Black womanhood, would be an integral part of the course. This meant that Black male studies and feminism will be brought into dialogue with one another, something that is atypical in the academy. Being able to plan the course with my Brazilian colleagues and to teach the course in Brazil really is something that made the experience for me extraordinary. The second thing for me was the materials that I introduced in the course. I introduced materials that were a new part of a body of work that I am formulating. This meant that instead of looking at Cuban literature, Spanish American literature, or even Brazilian literature, I opted for historical documentation. Historical documentation became the source of analysis, or really the object of analysis. So I introduced the students to materials about the sexual vulnerability of enslaved African men in Brazil. And we looked at cases from the Portuguese Inquisition. We looked at one particular case that was 5 pages long. It was, in fact, a confession, but it was not a confession of the rapist himself, because the enslavers that committed these acts were not considered rapists by Portuguese law. The Portuguese Inquisition, which was essentially a union between the Portuguese crown and the Portuguese Catholic Church, considered these acts of sodomy. They considered these means of sexual immorality. And so what is particularly powerful about the text that we looked at was the fact that the students were looking at an enslaved African man who confessed his own rape. The case is remarkably powerful because this man went out of his way to create an opportunity to denounce his enslaver. And he created a pretext for that, and he took the case to the authorities. In order to properly understand this case, I introduced the concepts of the man-not from Black male studies, from Tommy Curry's work, so that the students would understand that we should not think of masculinity as a site of cultural power when we're talking about racialized Black men. Rather than being a site of cultural power, masculinity is a liability for racialized men, whether they are enslaved or technically, legally, constitutionally free. The final thing that I thought was remarkable was the reaction of the students and their willingness to tackle with the material, though they were far more familiar with feminist theory than they were with the notion of the man-not that we were looking at in this course. The course provided an opportunity to redefine and rethink patriarchy, not as the domination of all women by all men, but rather as a kinship system in which men and women of the dominant group exercise power over members of the outgroup or the so-called darker races. And so the opportunity to teach here in Brazil was perhaps the most transformative part of my Fulbright experience. Students told me at one point they spent 5 hours after class had concluded talking back and forth about the theories that were put forth from Black male studies. They brought food to celebrate our last day of class, and they told me they had been discussing these theories in their WhatsApp group the entire time. So I am remarkably excited that I had the opportunity to be an African-American Fulbright Scholar at the State University of Rio de Janeiro. And I just wanted to make these comments here from my balcony in Rio de Janeiro. Dr. Petway out. Muito obrigado.